Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if you are doing enough for the planet, or if your small online choices actually matter? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating new study about how we make those choices, especially when we think nobody's watching. So, researchers are looking for better ways to measure if people are actually acting environmentally friendly, not just saying they are. They've noticed that a lot of previous ways to measure this stuff relied on people telling us what they do, which isn't always super reliable. Think about it, do you always admit to eating that extra bag of chips or leaving the lights on? Probably not. The big idea here is to find a way to see what people do online in a way that reflects their real-world environmental actions. They want something quick, easy, and that shows us something true about our behavior. They've come up with something called the one-shot download task, or OSD. Imagine this, you are doing a quick online survey or task, and you are given a choice. One choice means you do a little bit of boring work, like solving some number puzzles. The other choice means you download a bunch of completely useless files. Now, downloading these files might seem harmless, but it actually uses energy and creates carbon emissions. So, you are basically asked to choose between spending a bit of your time or costing the environment a bit. It is a simple one-time decision. To see if this OSD task actually works, they ran 2 studies. They wanted to find out if the choices people made on the OSD related to other things they measured, like how worried they were about the environment, whether they tended to buy eco-friendly products, and what their general feelings were about nature. Their first big question was, would people who are generally more concerned about the environment or who buy greener products actually make the more environmentally friendly choice on the OSD? They thought yes, they should. They also looked at eco-anxiety, which is that feeling of worry about climate change. Then, in the second study, they added a really interesting twist. They wanted to see if social pressure or even the idea of being watched could influence our environmental choices. They showed some participants images of eyes, like the famous watching eyes effect. The idea is that when we feel observed, we might behave better, even if it is just a computer screen with eyes. They hypothesized that people who saw the eyes would make more environmentally friendly choices on the OSD. So, what did they find? Well, for the first hypothesis, it was a bit of a mixed bag, but with some good news. They found that people who scored higher on the OSD, meaning they chose the more environmentally friendly option, like doing more boring puzzles, and downloading less, also tended to score higher on the ethically minded consumer behavior scale. This means they were more likely to say they buy sustainable products. That is a good sign. They also found that OSD scores related to the preservation aspect of environmental attitudes, which is about protecting nature. However, they didn't find a link between OSD scores and eco-anxiety. And interestingly, they didn't find a link with the utilization factor of environmental attitudes, which is more about using nature for human benefit. The researchers think this makes sense as an anthropocentric focus. A human-centered view might not really predict actual environmental behavior. Now, for that second study, the one with the watching eyes, this is where things get really interesting. The results here were pretty clear. When people saw images of eyes, they made significantly more environmentally friendly choices on the OSD. They were more likely to choose the option that involved more boring work and less downloading. Isn't that wild? Just the suggestion that someone or something is watching them made them act a bit greener. So, what does all this mean? First off, it looks like this one, Shot Download, Task is a promising new tool for measuring actual pro-environmental behavior. It is simple, it is online, and it seems to capture something real about how people make decisions that affect the environment. The fact that OSD choices related to buying eco-friendly products suggests that this task is measuring something meaningful. It is not just a random choice, it aligns with other behaviors and attitudes related to environmentalism. And the watching eyes effect, that is a big one. It suggests that even in our seemingly private online world, social cues can play a significant role in nudging us towards more sustainable choices. It's like our brains, even when we're just clicking around online, are still wired to consider how our actions might be perceived. This aligns with research showing that we often want to signal our values, especially when it comes to being environmentally conscious. Think of it as a subtle way of saying, I care about the planet, even if no one is actually looking over your shoulder. Now, the researchers are pretty upfront about some limitations. For example, study 2 had a slightly smaller sample size than planned. So while the result was significant, they suggest we should be a little cautious with it. More research is definitely needed to fully understand the social influence effect. Also, the environmental costs in the task, like downloading files or doing puzzles, are relatively small. Future studies could look at how changing these costs affects people's choices. But overall, this OSD task sounds like a really valuable addition to the tools environmental psychologists have. It's accessible, it's cheap to run, and it's a behavioral measure, which is what we need more of to really understand how people make choices that impact our planet. This could be a game changer for future research. Imagine being able to quickly and easily test interventions or understand how different factors influence people's tendency to choose the greener option online. It is a step towards understanding how we can encourage more pro-environmental behavior, not just in small lab tasks, but hopefully in the real world too. It opens the door for more practical applications and interventions that can help us tackle climate change. So, what is my take on this? I think it is a super clever way to get at actual behavior. The link between the OSD and eco-minded consumer choices is really telling. And that watching eyes effect, it highlights how much we are influenced by social cues. Even in the digital realm, it means that making pro-environmental behaviors more visible, or creating environments where people feel subtly observed making good choices, could be really powerful. The limitations mentioned, like the sample size in Study 2 and the scale of the environmental cost, are important to keep in mind. It means we can't jump to huge conclusions just yet. But it also points to exciting avenues for future research. What if they make the environmental cost bigger, or what if they test different social cues, not just eyes? Could this be used to test interventions or education programs? The possibilities are pretty exciting. So what do you guys think? Have you ever felt a little nudge to do the right thing online, even when you thought no one was looking? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychology of environmental behavior, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.